Amara had always been different. Growing up in the little village of Amuri, where people still gathered under mango trees to gossip and children carve toys out of palm leaves, she was the girl with arms too strong, shoulders too broad, and legs built like she was born for battles. While other girls braided their hair, compared ribbons, or practiced dance steps in the sand, Amara carried buckets of water like they weighed nothing and chopped firewood twice as fast as the boys. At first, people laughed in a harmless way. "Ah, see our strong girl," the elders would tease as she passed. But as she grew older, around 14, 15, 16, the laughter twisted into something sharper. "She looks like a man. Which husband will marry a girl like that? Her arms are bigger than her father's own." Those words followed her everywhere she went. To the market, to the stream, to the farm, even to church. Her mother always told her, "Strength is a gift, Amara. Never apologize for it." But even that blessing felt heavy sometimes. Strength didn't stop loneliness. Strength didn't stop people from whispering. Strength didn't stop the sting in her chest each time children pointed and giggled behind her back. By the time she turned 25, Amara felt like a visitor in her own village, a stranger in the place she'd grown up. She tried to hide how much it hurt, but every night she lay on her bamboo mat staring at the rusted ceiling, wondering when her life would finally start. She wanted something different, somewhere her strength wouldn't make her strange, somewhere she could exist without being mocked for simply being herself. One evening, after a particularly harsh day, when two women at the well had loudly compared her arms to pounded yam in human form, Amara reached her breaking point. "I can't stay here anymore," she whispered to herself. Her voice trembled, not out of fear, but out of hope. That night, she packed the little she owned. 3 shirts, 2 trousers, an old pair of boots, and a tiny savings pouch. She told her parents she needed a new life, a new beginning, a place where she wasn't a walking joke. Her parents didn't try to stop her. They saw the exhaustion in her eyes. "Go," her father said softly. "Find a place where your strength can grow." Her mother hugged her tightly, almost fiercely. "And don't let anyone make you smaller than you are." With tears burning behind her eyes, Amara boarded a dusty bus the next morning, heading toward Lagos, the city of noise, traffic, chaos, and endless possibilities. Lagos was nothing like her village. It was loud, unpredictable, busy in a way that made even the trees seem restless. Cars honked as if arguing with each other. People rushed past as though time itself was chasing them. Tall buildings stabbed the sky. Every corner smelled like something different. Fried plantain, petrol fumes, roasted corn, sea wind, and life. Amara felt overwhelmed and excited all at once. She arrived with no place to stay and no job waiting for her. But she had determination, and sometimes that was enough to start a miracle. For days she walked from site to site, asking for work. Most people laughed as soon as she said, "I want to work construction." "A woman? Here, go look for shop work," a beg. "This is not for ladies." But Amara didn't give up. Each rejection only fueled her desire to prove them wrong. Then finally, on her 4th day, she approached a new, rising construction site in Victoria Island, a massive skyscraper project owned by a man people whispered about, Ethan Obasai, the 30-year-old billionaire who built half the city. The site manager barely looked at her at first. "We don't hire," he began, but then he looked properly at her arms, her posture, her determination. "Can you carry blocks?" "Yes." "Can you mix cement?" "Yes." "Can you work from morning till night?" "Yes." He paused. She didn't blink. "Fine," he said at last. "Start tomorrow." And just like that, Amara's new life began. Construction work suited her. The heavy lifting, the long hours, the physical strength it demanded. For the first time in her life, her body felt like a blessing instead of a curse. She carried cinder blocks with ease, pushed wheelbarrows full of sand without stopping, and climbed scaffolding faster than most of the men. Some of them tried to make fun of her at first. "You day show off ABI? See muscle. You want build the site by yourself." But after watching her work circles around them, the jokes died. Respect took their place. Since she had no home yet, she slept on the construction site, on a stack of folded sacks under one of the unfinished floors. It wasn't comfortable, but it was safe enough, and it was peaceful. At night, she would lie there listening to the distant sounds of traffic and imagining a better future. A future where she didn't have to hide. One sunny afternoon, everything changed. The air buzzed with the usual noise. Metal clanging, workers shouting, machines rumbling. When suddenly the atmosphere shifted. A sleek black SUV rolled into the site and parked near the entrance. Doors opened. Security men stepped out first. Then him, the owner of everything, the billionaire himself. Ethan Obasai, tall, clean-cut, sharp jawline, dressed in a navy suit that looked like it cost more than all her belongings combined. The workers stiffened the moment they saw him. Conversations dropped. Everyone tried to look busy. Everyone except Amara, who simply continued lifting the heavy cinder blocks she had been carrying. She didn't even notice him at first. Not until she sensed a presence behind her. She turned and froze. The billionaire was staring directly at her. Not just casual curiosity, not disgust, not confusion, but a long, surprised stare, as though she were the most unexpected thing he had ever seen on a construction site. Amara swallowed hard. "Good afternoon, sir." He didn't reply immediately. Instead, he walked slowly toward her, eyes still fixed on her strength, her sweat, her determination. "You," he finally said, almost sounding breathless. "You work here?" "Yes, sir," she replied. "You carry all of that?" He pointed at the blocks. "Yes, sir." "And you sleep here too?" Her cheeks warmed slightly. "Yes, sir. Just for now. Until I find a place." Ethan looked at her for a long moment, a mixture of fascination and disbelief in his eyes. "Most women don't choose this kind of work," he said gently. "Most women don't grow up like me," she replied. A small smile appeared on his face. "What's your name?" "Amara." "Well, Amara," he said, "you're extraordinary." No one had ever said that to her before. Not once. Not in 25 years. She blinked fast, unsure what to do with the warmth that spread through her chest. From that afternoon on, whenever Ethan came for inspections, he found himself looking for her. And whenever Amara saw his SUV approach, her heart fluttered with a feeling she didn't yet understand. They talked, first about work, then about their lives, then about things that mattered to them. Dreams, fears, hopes. He listened in a way no one ever had. Their conversations became the bright spots in her days, little moments that reminded her she was more than the muscle people mocked. She was seen. She was valued. She was interesting. Amara didn't know it yet, but her life was shifting, slowly and quietly. And soon, everything would change faster than she ever imagined. The moon hung low over Lagos like a quiet lamp, casting soft silver light across the half-finished skyscraper. At night, the construction site felt like a different world. Emptier, quieter, almost peaceful. Machines were still. Buckets and cement bags lay untouched. The air smelled of dust, rain, and the faint smoke of distant suya grills. Amara had just finished her evening routine, washing off the cement dust in a corner bucket, spreading her mat on the floor of the unfinished second level, and settling down with her old, tattered novel. Her body ached from work, but she didn't mind. Physical pain was familiar. Emotional pain, that was harder. She had barely read 2 pages when she heard the rumble of a car approaching. That was strange. Nobody ever came to the site at night. Not engineers, not managers, not even the security guys bothered unless something serious was happening. Amara stood up, peeking over the edge of the scaffolding. A black SUV rolled in. Then the door opened, and Ethan Obasai stepped out. She blinked, surprised. Ethan never came at night. He always arrived in broad daylight with bodyguards and assistants crowding around him. But tonight he was alone, or so she thought. A second door opened. A tall man with a sharp face and restless eyes stepped out. Someone Amara had never seen before. She watched closely, instincts buzzing quietly inside her chest. Ethan walked farther into the site, hands in his pockets, gazing up at the towering structure like he was lost in thought. The other man followed closely, too closely, as if waiting. Amara moved silently along the floor, climbing down the wooden ladder so she could get a better view without being noticed. A tiny warning voice whispered in her heart, "Something isn't right." Down on the ground, Ethan glanced back at the man. "Are you sure you locked the car?" he asked. "Yes, yes," the man replied with a forced laugh. "Everything's fine." His voice didn't match his smile. Ethan walked toward the open space where the sun hit during the day. Amara stepped closer, hiding behind a stack of cinder blocks. Then it happened. So fast she barely processed it. The man grabbed a long construction stick, thick, heavy, used for support beams, and swung it at Ethan's head with full force. The sound echoed like thunder. Ethan crumpled instantly. Amara froze in shock, her heart slamming against her ribs. The man raised the stick again. No, he's going to kill him. And that split second was all she needed. Amara didn't think. She moved. She burst from behind the blocks like lightning, sprinting across the site with a speed she didn't know she had. The man had already struck Ethan for the second time, this time with a sickening crack. Ethan collapsed completely, blood dripping from his hair. The man lifted the stick again, but Amara was already there. With a fierce, instinctive cry, she swung her fist. It wasn't just a punch. It was years of pain, strength, rejection, and hidden courage exploding at once. Her fist connected with his jaw. Crack. The man flew backward, the stick dropping from his hands as he hit the ground and didn't move again. Amara panted, heart racing so loudly it drowned out the night. Her hands shook. The world felt blurry for a moment. Then she saw Ethan. His body lay limp on the ground, his face pale, blood running down the side of his forehead. Amara's heart broke. "Ethan," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "Ethan, can you hear me?" No response. She pressed trembling fingers to his neck. Thank God. There was a pulse, faint but steady. Fear sank into her bones. She couldn't leave him here. She couldn't wait for help that might not come. She couldn't waste a second. Without hesitation, she slid her arms under his body. Ethan was tall, heavy, but Amara lifted him as if he weighed no more than a bag of rice. Years of carrying blocks and mixing cement had built her strength for this single moment, though she didn't know it until now. "Stay with me," she whispered as she hurried toward the gate. "Don't you dare leave me." Her boots pounded the dirt as she ran, Ethan's blood warm against her shoulder. She didn't care that tears blurred her vision. She didn't care that her breath burned. She cared only about him. The hospital lights were too bright, cold, sterile, loud. Amara burst through the entrance, shouting for help, and nurses rushed toward her. They placed Ethan on a stretcher and rolled him quickly down the hallway. A doctor sprinted beside them. "What happened?" "He was attacked." "By who?" "I don't know. Please, just save him." Her voice cracked. She hadn't cried when people mocked her whole life. She hadn't cried when she left her home. She hadn't cried when she slept alone on the site floor. But tonight, she cried, because this wasn't just anyone. This was Ethan, the man who listened to her, who talked to her like she mattered, who saw strength where others saw shame. She sat in the waiting room with her hands clasped tightly, her clothes stained with his blood. Minutes felt like hours. The ticking clock sounded like distant footsteps. Every time a doctor walked by, her heart jumped. At some point, she rested her head against the wall and dozed off out of exhaustion. Early the next morning, footsteps stopped in front of her. She jerked awake. Ethan stood there, alive, bandaged, weak, pale, but alive. He smiled softly. "You stayed." Her eyes filled again. "Of course I stayed." He walked slowly toward her, each step careful. When he sat beside her, she could see the dried tears on his cheeks. "The doctor said if you hadn't brought me when you did." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Suddenly, his hand reached for hers. "Amara," he whispered, "you saved my life." She swallowed hard. "Anyone would have." "No," he squeezed her hand gently. Not everyone would run toward danger. Not everyone would fight. Not everyone would carry me alone. You are incredible. Her throat tightened. Then his voice grew serious. Do you know who attacked me? She shook her head. It was Femi, Ethan said quietly. A friend I trusted. Someone I've helped for years. He was jealous of everything. Jealous of my success. My name. My future. Amara felt her stomach twist. To betray someone so brutally, she couldn't imagine it. But because of you, Ethan continued, I'm alive, and the police will find him. He leaned back slightly, looking at her with a gaze she couldn't fully understand yet. Grateful, intense, almost protective. You must have been terrified. I wasn't thinking, she admitted softly. I just moved. You risked your life for me. His voice trembled. I won't forget that. Ever. They sat in silence for a long moment, but it wasn't an empty silence. It was filled with gratitude, shock, relief, and something else neither of them dared name yet. Finally, Ethan's breathing steadied. What now? Amara asked quietly. Ethan looked at her with a slow smile forming. Now, he said softly, I start by thanking you properly. Later that day, as the police captured the attacker and he confessed to everything, Ethan watched Amara with a new kind of admiration. She wasn't just strong. She wasn't just courageous. She wasn't just different. She was the woman who saved his life. And without realizing it, something inside him had shifted forever. And for Amara, this was the moment a new chapter of her life began. One she never expected. The morning air was fresh, carrying the soft smell of dew and newly mixed cement across the construction site. Workers moved like ants, lifting, pushing, shouting instructions. Yet somehow the scene felt calmer than usual. Maybe it was because Amara's heart was still full from the night before. She hadn't slept much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan lying unconscious, then waking up and looking at her like she was the reason he was still alive. She tried to keep her mind on work, but the memory kept replaying like a movie. She didn't expect to see him so soon, so when a familiar black SUV rolled into the site, her breath caught. A few workers nudged each other, pointing. That's him, someone whispered. Is he supposed to be here already? Another asked. But Amara heard none of it. Her heart skipped as Ethan stepped out of the car. He wasn't wearing the usual tailored suit. Today he wore a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled up, a hint of bandage peeking from under the collar. He looked tired but strong, gentle but determined, and he walked straight toward her. Good morning, Amara, he said, his smile warm and soft. She set down the cinder block in her hands. Good morning, Ethan. You shouldn't be walking around. You're still healing. He chuckled. I'll heal, especially now that I know I'm safe. Their eyes met for a moment, long enough for her to feel a strange flutter in her chest. He continued, I came to thank you again. You already did, she said, brushing off the compliment. No, he said quietly. Not properly. Workers nearby pretended to be busy, though their sideways glances made it obvious they were listening. Ethan noticed and gently gestured for Amara to follow him to a quieter corner behind some scaffolding. When they were alone, he took a breath, as if gathering courage. Amara, after last night, everything changed for me. I realized how quickly life can disappear, and how rare real loyalty is. She blinked, not sure where he was going with this. I've been thinking a lot, he continued, about trust, about safety, about the people around me. And the truth is, he paused, the one person I trust most right now is you. The words hit her like warm light. Me? She whispered. Yes. He stepped a little closer. You risked your life to save mine. That doesn't make me special, she said softly. Actually, it does, he replied. Most people run from danger. You ran into it. Her throat tightened. He took another breath. So I'd like to make you an offer. Something big. Her brows lifted. What offer? Ethan looked at her with calm certainty. I want you to be my personal bodyguard. The world around her seemed to pause. The distant machine noises faded. Even the wind stopped moving. A bodyguard? She repeated, stunned. Yes, but I've never had formal training. Training can be arranged, he said. What you already have can't be taught. Instinct, courage, strength, loyalty. Amara stared at her hands, still covered in dust from work. She had been mocked her entire life for her muscles, for being too strong, too big, too different. Now someone was telling her that everything she'd been criticized for was exactly what made her valuable. Her voice shook as she replied, Ethan, are you sure you want me for this? He nodded without hesitation. I've never been more sure of anything. She swallowed hard. Then I'll do it. A smile spread across his face. Relieved, grateful, almost proud. Thank you, Amara. I'm honored. She almost laughed. He was honored? But before she could say anything, Ethan added, Now about something else. She tilted her head. What is it? You can't keep sleeping on the construction site floor, he said gently. Not anymore. Her cheeks warmed. She hated how vulnerable that made her feel. He must have noticed her discomfort because his voice softened even more. There's no shame in where you came from, he said. But you deserve better. And what does better mean? She asked, half nervous, half curious. His lips curled into a small smile. I got you a house. Her mouth fell open. A house? Yes, a safe one. Quiet neighborhood. Fully yours. She stared at him in disbelief. Ethan, I can't accept something like that. You can, he replied softly. And you will. After what you did for me, it's the least I can offer. She stood there in stunned silence until he added, Oh, and one more thing. What now? She asked, half terrified of the answer. I also bought you a car. She nearly stopped breathing. A car? Yes, for transportation. And because bodyguards don't walk to work. Her hands trembled slightly. Ethan, why are you doing so much for me? He looked at her with eyes full of a gentleness she didn't understand yet. Because you saved my life, he said simply. And because you deserve a life where you don't have to hide your strength. Something warm and fragile bloomed inside her chest. Come, he said softly. Let me show you your new home. The house was more beautiful than anything Amara had ever imagined. 2 bedrooms, clean white walls, wide windows that let the sunlight pour in, and a small garden outside with neat green grass. She stepped inside slowly, afraid the space would disappear if she moved too fast. This is mine, she whispered. All yours, Ethan said, watching her with a smile. She ran her hand across the kitchen counter. Felt too smooth, too polished, too new. Everything about the house screamed a fresh beginning. But then she walked into the living room and froze. The room was completely empty. Is something wrong? Ethan asked gently. No, she said quickly. It's just, it feels strange. I've never had a home to decorate before. Then let's fix that, Ethan said instantly. We're going to the mall. She blinked. Together. Of course, he said. Why wouldn't I come? Her heart fluttered again. The mall felt like stepping into another universe. Bright lights reflected off polished floors. Music drifted from speakers. Shoppers hurried around holding glossy bags. It was overwhelming but exciting. Ethan walked beside her, hands in his pockets, completely unfazed by the attention they got. Because yes, people were staring. Some stared at Ethan, recognizing the billionaire. Others stared at Amara, surprised to see a muscular woman walking beside him with such ease. But Ethan didn't care, and somehow that made her care less too. They visited a furniture store first. Ethan asked, What kind of sofa do you want? She looked around helplessly. I've never chosen furniture before. Okay, he said with a grin. Let's try something simple. Do you like soft cushions or firm cushions? Soft, she said. He pointed. That one looks comfortable. She sat on it, sinking into the plush fabric. A surprised smile spread across her face. It feels amazing. Then we'll take it, he said. No, wait. Shouldn't we compare prices? Ethan laughed lightly. No. If you like it, that's enough. Her cheeks warmed again. They picked out a bed next. She chose a sturdy wooden one with a headboard carved in gentle patterns. They chose a dining table, lamps, curtains, plates, and a set of pale blue towels that made her think of clear skies. Every time she hesitated, Ethan reassured her, "You deserve this. Choose what makes you happy. Don't hold back anymore." Something inside her softened with every word. By the time they finished arranging everything back at her new home, the sun had begun to set. The rooms glowed with warm orange light, bouncing off the walls and new furniture. It no longer looked empty. It looked lived in. It looked loved. "It's beautiful," Amara whispered, hardly believing it was real. "It suits you," Ethan said, his voice low. Strong, peaceful, warm. Her heart fluttered at the word warm, but she stopped breathing at the next word. Beautiful. She looked away quickly, blinking fast. I don't hear that word often." "Well," Ethan said softly, "get used to it." For a moment, they just stood there in the glow of the new home, facing each other, breathing the same quiet air. A moment too meaningful to be casual, too gentle to be ignored. Then Ethan stepped back, clearing his throat. "I should let you rest," he said. "It's been a long day." "Yes," she replied, though part of her didn't want him to go. He walked toward the door, paused, and looked back. "Amara, I'm glad you said yes." "So am I," she whispered. After he left, she lay on her new bed and stared at the ceiling, tears silently sliding down her face. Not tears of sadness, but tears of finally being seen, finally being valued, finally feeling like she belonged somewhere. Her new life had just begun. Amara adjusted the collar of her new security uniform, still not fully used to seeing herself in it. The dark jacket fit her broad shoulders perfectly, the fabric sturdy and professional. She looked strong, confident, capable. She looked like someone who belonged in Ethan Obeisai's world. But the truth was, the transition hadn't been completely smooth. Her first week as Ethan's personal bodyguard was overwhelming. She had a new home, a new car, new clothes, and a new responsibility that felt heavier than any cinder block she had ever carried. Protecting a billionaire was nothing like working construction. Every room she entered needed scanning. Every crowd required awareness. Every event came with unpredictable risks. Sometimes she missed the simplicity of lifting blocks and pushing sand. But then she would see Ethan smile at her from across a room, and she would remember exactly why she accepted the job. Today, they were heading to a charity gala at a luxury hotel downtown. It was one of Ethan's many events, but Amara felt nervous. She had attended several functions with him already, but this one was different. It was bigger, louder, filled with powerful people wearing suits and shimmering gowns. Ethan stepped out of his bedroom as she waited in the living room of his penthouse. He wore a deep navy suit that fit him like it was made just for him. His hair was neatly styled, his expression calm and ready. But the moment he saw her, he paused. "You look incredible," he said warmly. Amara blinked. "I'm in a uniform." "And what a uniform," he replied. "You look powerful." A shy smile tugged at her lips. "Thank you." They left the penthouse, rode down the elevator, and stepped into the soft evening breeze outside. As their car pulled up, Ethan gestured for her to enter first, something he always did, even though she was technically there to protect him. The driver nodded respectfully. "Good evening, Miss Amara." "Good evening, sir." "Evening," they both replied. As the car drifted through the city lights, Ethan turned to her. "You're quiet today," he observed. "I'm just thinking," she said. "About what?" She hesitated. "About everything. My life has changed so fast. Sometimes I still feel like I'm dreaming." He smiled gently. "You deserve all of it. And more." She looked out of the window to hide the warmth rising in her cheeks. The hotel was enormous. Shimmering glass walls, velvet carpets, gold chandeliers. A red carpet walkway stretched across the entrance, flashing with camera lights. Celebrities, politicians, entrepreneurs, photographers, influencers. The lobby buzzed like a living beehive. As Ethan stepped out of the car, the cameras flashed wildly. Mr. Obeisai. Ethan, over here please. Smile for the press. Amara moved close, professional but alert. She wasn't used to being watched by hundreds of eyes. She wasn't used to walking beside a man whose name alone filled headlines. But she kept her posture straight, shoulders strong, face calm. Ethan whispered without moving his lips, "You're doing great." And somehow the crowd didn't feel so overwhelming anymore. Inside the ballroom, soft classical music filled the air. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above like falling stars. Round tables decorated with roses and candles filled the space, while waiters carried trays of drinks that shimmered like jewels. Amara stood behind Ethan as he greeted guests. She watched every movement, every interaction, scanning for threats. Not because she expected danger necessarily, but because protecting him had become instinctive. As the night went on, Ethan spoke on stage about charity projects he was launching, a scholarship program for underprivileged students and a new healthcare initiative for rural communities. His voice carried strength and sincerity. Amara felt proud listening to him. He wasn't just wealthy, he cared deeply. When he stepped off stage, he walked straight to her. "Ready for a break?" he asked quietly. She frowned. "I'm supposed to be alert at all times." "You can still be alert while sipping juice," he said teasingly. She shook her head, but he gently nudged her shoulder. "Come on." They walked together out to the hotel balcony, where the city glowed beneath them in a sea of lights. The air smelled like cool night wind and faint perfume drifting from inside. Ethan leaned against the railing, loosening his tie slightly. "Events like this exhaust me." "You hide it well," she said. He looked at her. "That's because having you here makes it easier." She swallowed, caught off guard by his honesty. "I'm glad I can help." "You do much more than help," he replied softly. Silence settled between them, warm, familiar. Ethan's eyes lingered on her a little longer than usual. "Amara," he began quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What was your life like before all this?" She stared at the city lights. "Simple, hard, lonely." "Lonely?" he repeated gently. "Yes, people didn't understand me back home. They didn't understand my strength. They thought it made me strange, unattractive, less feminine. I felt like I didn't belong anywhere." Ethan turned fully toward her. "But you're extraordinary," he said. "Your strength is beautiful. Anyone who made you feel less than that was wrong." Her chest tightened, emotion rising unexpectedly. "You're the first person to ever say something like that." His voice softened further. "Then I'm honored to be the first." She looked away quickly, blinking back tears. He continued, "What about your dreams? Did you ever have them?" "Of course," she said, smiling faintly. "But I buried most of them. I didn't think someone like me was allowed to dream." "And now?" Ethan asked. She took a deep breath. "Now, I feel like life finally opened a door for me, and I'm afraid it might close someday." Ethan stepped closer. Not too close, just enough that his warmth brushed against her. "This door isn't closing," he said firmly. "Not as long as I'm here." Her heart beat faster. He hesitated, as though fighting with himself, then asked softly, "Amara, do you ever think about us? About what we're becoming?" Her breath caught. "I don't know," she whispered. "Sometimes I do, but I'm scared to." "Why?" "Because you're you, and I'm just—" "Don't finish that sentence," he said gently. "You're not just anything. You're someone who saved my life. Someone who changed my world." She blinked, stunned. Their eyes met and held. A moment stretched between them, full of unspoken feelings neither could deny anymore. Ethan reached out slowly, carefully, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. His hand brushed hers, warm, steady. "Amara," he whispered, "I care about you." Her chest trembled. "I care about you too." Then, slowly, he lifted her chin with gentle fingers, and he kissed her. It was soft at first, gentle, a question rather than a demand. Her breath caught as her heart soared, electricity running through every part of her. She responded cautiously, then fully, allowing herself to feel everything she had tried to hide. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan exhaled shakily. "That was perfect," he said with a breathless smile. She nodded, unable to speak, because it was perfect. A moment she would never forget. A moment that changed everything. The rest of the night felt different, lighter, warmer. Whenever their eyes met, a secret smile passed between them. Whenever he brushed past her, her skin tingled. Whenever he spoke, she heard something deeper in his voice. When they finally reached the car and the driver asked, "Home, sir?" Ethan hesitated. His gaze drifted to Amara. "Yes," he said softly. "Take us home." She looked out the window as the city lights passed by, but her heart was somewhere else. Still on that balcony, still feeling his lips on hers, still trying to understand how her life had become something beautiful, something unexpected, something filled with hope. Ethan had always been close to his parents. They were proud of him, of the empire he had built, the lives he changed, the man he had become. But when it came to relationships, they were cautious, protective, determined to make sure no one got close to him for the wrong reasons. So when Ethan finally told them about Amara, about the woman who saved his life and the woman he now loved, they listened quietly. Too quietly. His mother exchanged a look with his father. Not a bad look, just a thoughtful one, concerned one. And Ethan knew immediately, they don't trust this yet. He tried to reason with them. "Amara isn't like anyone I've ever met. She didn't help me for money. She didn't even accept help easily. She just cares." His father folded his arms. "Ethan, caring is easy when it comes with benefits. You are a billionaire. People will show kindness when they can gain something." "That's not who she is," Ethan said firmly. His mother sighed softly. "We are not saying she is a bad person. We only want to be sure her heart is in the right place." Ethan leaned back, resisting the urge to roll his eyes. "You don't have to test her." But they had already decided. "We do," his father said gently but firmly. "Not because we doubt you, but because we love you." Ethan protested, but they wouldn't budge. Eventually, after an hour of conversation, they convinced him, barely, to let them carry out their little test. But he hated it. Amara had no idea what was coming when she woke up on Saturday morning. She opened her curtains and stretched, enjoying the quiet peace of her home. The sun was soft and golden. Birds chirped outside. The world felt calm. She made breakfast, eggs, toast, and tea, and was just cleaning up when she heard a knock on her door. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened the door, she froze. A tall, elegant man stood there. He wore an expensive suit. His hair was perfectly styled. His presence demanded attention. And although she had seen him only in photos, she recognized him instantly. Ethan's father. "Good morning, Amara," he said with a polite smile. "May I come in?" For a moment, she couldn't even speak. She had been preparing for the day she would meet Ethan's parents, but she didn't expect it to happen like this. Unexpected, quiet, with her hair uncombed and her heart racing. "Of course," she finally said, stepping aside. He walked in slowly, studying the neatly arranged living room. "This place is very nice," he said. "Thank you," she replied nervously. They sat down. He crossed one leg over the other and took a breath. "I came here for a reason." Amara straightened. "Is something wrong?" He shook his head. "Not wrong. Just important." Her heart thumped. She could sense it. Something heavy was coming. "I want to talk about my son," he said. "And about you." She clasped her hands together. "Okay. My son is a good man, a generous man, and that generosity makes him vulnerable." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I need to know if you truly love him." Her chest tightened. "I do love him. Very much. You saved his life," he said slowly. "And we are grateful. But love is different." She swallowed. "I understand." "Good." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This," he said, placing it gently on the table, Contains $10 million. Amara's mouth fell open. She stared at the envelope like it was something poisonous. "This money is yours," he said calmly. "If you agree to leave my son's life." Her breath caught. "Leave him?" "Yes." Amara shook her head slowly, disbelief washing over her. "Why would you think that's something I would accept?" "Because it's a life-changing amount," he replied. "You could go anywhere, start over anywhere, never worry again." Tears stung her eyes, hot, frustrated tears. Not because of the offer, but because he thought so little of her. "Sir," she said quietly but firmly, "I didn't save your son for money." "And I believe that," he replied. "But love can be complicated. Sometimes people convince themselves they love someone because of what that person provides." She stared at him, hurt, angry, disappointed. "My love cannot be bought," she whispered, "and my loyalty cannot be priced." His expression didn't change. "Are you sure?" She stood. "Let me tell you something," she said softly. "Your son is the first person who ever made me feel seen. The first person who made me feel like my strength isn't a curse. The first person who treated me like I mattered. I didn't fall in love with his money. I fell in love with the way he looks at me, the way he listens, the way he treats people, the way he made space for me in a world where I've never belonged." Her voice cracked. "If you think $10 million can make me walk away from that, then you don't understand your son." For the first time, Ethan's father looked unsure. She took a breath. "Please leave." He stood slowly. There was a strange glimmer in his eyes. Not anger, not disappointment, but something closer to respect. "Thank you for your time, Amara," he said quietly. She closed the door behind him and slid to the floor, tears leaving warm trails down her cheeks. She wasn't crying because of the insult. She was crying because she had been tested for a love she had never experienced before, one she was still learning to trust. Later that afternoon, at the Obasai family mansion, Ethan's father shared everything with his wife and son. "She refused," he said simply, calmly, respectfully, and with dignity. Ethan's mother breathed out in relief. "I told you she wasn't after money." Ethan glared at them both. "You shouldn't have tested her at all." His father nodded. "Perhaps not. But now we know her heart." Ethan stood abruptly, grabbing his keys. "I'm going to see her." Meanwhile, Amara sat alone in her living room, hugging her knees, trying to calm her heartbeat. She kept replaying the moment over and over. The envelope, the offer, the insult, the pain of being measured by money once again. When she heard a knock at her door, she wiped her face quickly. She opened the door to find Ethan standing there. Hair messy, breathing slightly fast, worry written all over him. "Amara," he stepped inside. "My father told me what he did." Tears welled in her eyes again. "I'm so sorry," Ethan whispered, pulling her into his arms without hesitation. She melted into him, buried her face in his shoulder, shaking as the emotions she had been holding back finally spilled out. "I'm not a toy," she whispered. "I'm not someone people can test like that." "I know," Ethan said softly, stroking her hair. "I know. And it won't happen again." She clung to him, trembling. "I didn't take the money," she said between breaths. "Not even for a second." Ethan smiled against her hair. "I knew you wouldn't." "You did?" she asked, pulling back slightly. "Yes," he said, cupping her cheek gently. "Because I know your heart better than they do." She searched his eyes, finding only warmth, safety, love. And in that moment, standing in the quiet of her living room with his arms around her, she realized something. She wasn't alone anymore. Not in this life. Not in this love. Not in this journey. She had him, and he had her. Days passed after the first test. On the outside, life slowly returned to normal. Ethan went back to meetings, events, and projects. Amara resumed her duties as his bodyguard, standing beside him at conferences, riding with him in cars, watching over him at crowded gatherings. But inside, something still hurt. The memory of his father sitting in her living room, placing that envelope of money on her table, and asking her to walk away. It stayed with her like a bruise that refused to fade. Amara tried to shake it off. She reminded herself of Ethan's arms around her, his apology, his words. "I know your heart. They will too. Give it time." So she tried. But sometimes, late at night, lying on her bed in the quiet of her house, she wondered, will I ever be enough for them? Or will I always be the girl they tested? Ethan's parents, however, could not stop talking about her. She refused it. His father repeated for what felt like the 10th time. $10 million. She said no. His mother listened in thoughtful silence, her fingers resting on her chin. "What did she say?" she asked. "That her love couldn't be bought. That she didn't fall for his money," he replied. She spoke about him with conviction. His mother's eyes softened. "And yet you still look unsure." He hesitated. "I believe her more now, but I still worry. Not about her actions, about her future. Is she strong enough to handle this life? The media? The judgment?" His wife sat back in her chair. "There is only one way to know." He raised a brow. "What are you thinking?" She smiled slightly. "I want to meet her myself. Alone. No pressure from you. No interference from Ethan. I want to see her eyes when she talks about him. I want to hear the truth from her heart." "And how will you do that?" he asked. "I'll give her a choice," she said. "A different one." The morning Amara received her unexpected visitor, she was dressed in simple home clothes, soft leggings and a plain t-shirt. Her hair was down, falling over her shoulders. She had taken the day off to rest, read a little, and maybe cook something nice for herself. She was in the kitchen when she heard a knock at the door. Her heart jumped. For a second, she wondered if Ethan had come by without calling, the way he sometimes did. She wiped her hands and hurried to the door, already smiling. But when she opened it, she found herself face to face with a graceful woman in an elegant pastel dress, with kind eyes and perfectly styled hair. Ethan's mother. Amara's smile faded into shock. "Good morning," the woman said gently. "You must be Amara." "Yes," Amara replied, quickly straightening. "Please, come in." "Thank you." Amara stepped aside, suddenly self-conscious. Was the living room neat enough? Did the house smell okay? Was she dressed too casually? But Ethan's mother walked in slowly, looking around with quiet interest. "This is a beautiful home," she said. "Thank you," Amara replied, her voice a little tight. "Would you like some water? Tea? Juice?" "Water would be nice," she said with a small smile. Amara hurried to the kitchen, took a deep breath, and returned with a glass of water. Her hands shook just a little. Ethan's mother accepted it gracefully and sat down on the couch. Amara took the seat opposite her. For a moment there was silence. Then Ethan's mother placed a folder on the table. It was slim, made of dark leather, and it looked important. Amara's heart started to race again. "I hope you don't mind me visiting unannounced," the woman began. "I wanted to see you in your own space, away from pressure, away from my son." "It's okay," Amara said softly. "I've been hoping to meet you." "That is kind of you," she replied. "I know my husband came to see you already." The memory of that day flashed in Amara's mind. The envelope, the offer, the pain. "Yes," she said quietly. "He did. He told us what happened," she continued. "That you refused the money. That you spoke of Ethan with respect and love." Amara looked down at her hands. Ethan's mother watched her carefully. Then she opened the folder on the table. Inside was a passport. Amara's breath caught. "And this," she said, sliding out a second document, "is a valid visa to the United States. Approved. Ready to use." Amara stared at the items as if they were part of a dream or a nightmare. "I don't understand," she whispered. Ethan's mother folded her hands in her lap. "My husband offered you money to walk away," she said calmly. "He tested your ability to say no to wealth. You passed that test. But there is something more tempting than money alone." Amara's chest tightened. "What is that?" "Escape," the woman said simply. "Freedom. A new life, far away from judgment, far away from pressure, far away from pain. She gently tapped the documents. With this passport and this visa, you could start over in a new country. My husband's offer still stands. You could take the money, take this visa, travel to the United States, and never have to deal with our world again. No media, no gossip, no fear of not belonging. You could build a quiet life far away. Her words painted a picture in Amara's mind: wide streets, distant cities, new people, fresh air, a place where nobody knew her past. Nobody laughed at her body. Nobody whispered behind her back. A life free from tests, free from suspicion. You have earned the right to choose, Ethan's mother continued softly. You saved my son's life. You are owed something. I am offering you a way out. Amara lifted her gaze slowly, her eyes full of emotion. A way out of what? She asked. A way out of a life that might be too hard, his mother said. My son's world is not easy. Cameras will follow you. People will judge you. Some will say you do not deserve to stand beside him. Are you ready for that? The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Amara thought of everything she had been through. The mocking in her village. The way people stared at her muscles. The loneliness. The tears no one saw. The quiet nights on the construction site floor. The sting of being treated like a problem to solve. Then she thought of Ethan. Of the way he smiled when she walked into a room. Of the way he listened when she spoke. Of the way he looked at her like she was not too much but just enough. Of the way he held her when she cried. Of the way he kissed her like she was worth loving. Her eyes filled with tears she didn't bother wiping away. Do you really think, Amara whispered, that any place in the world would feel like home without him? Ethan's mother said nothing. She just watched. Amara took a deep breath. Yes, my life has been hard, she continued, her voice trembling. Yes, I've been laughed at. Yes, people have said cruel things. And maybe more people will. Maybe your world will be harsh. Maybe the media will call me names. Maybe strangers will say I don't deserve your son. Tears slipped down her cheeks. But he is the first person who ever made me feel like I wasn't broken. Her voice grew stronger. When he talks to me, I forget every insult I ever heard. When he looks at me, I stop feeling like I have to apologize for who I am. When I stand beside him, I feel right, like I belong there, like I was always meant to stand beside him. She shook her head slowly. I can't trade that for a passport and a visa. I can't trade that for comfort. I can't trade that for a life where he doesn't exist. Her eyes lifted, full of quiet fire. He is not just a billionaire to me. He is the man who saw me when the world looked away. And I will not give that up for anything in this world. Silence filled the room. Deep, heavy, powerful. Ethan's mother stared at her for a long, long moment. There was no anger in her face. No disappointment. Only something soft and shining in her eyes. She closed the folder slowly and slid the documents back inside. Then she stood. Amara's heart pounded. Had she said too much? Had she been too emotional? Too honest? Thank you for your honesty, Ethan's mother said quietly. Amara swallowed. I meant every word. I know, the woman replied. That is why I came. She picked up the folder and held it at her side. Then, to Amara's surprise, she stepped closer. For a brief moment she studied her, really studied her. The strength in her shoulders, the vulnerability in her eyes, the courage in her voice. A faint smile touched the corners of her lips. You are stronger than I thought, she said softly. Not just in body, in heart. Warmth spread through Amara's chest. I don't want your son's money, Amara whispered. I only want his heart. And I want him to have mine. Ethan's mother gave a slow, almost proud nod. Take care of it, she said. His heart is more valuable than all the money he owns. I will, Amara replied, her voice firm. His mother turned toward the door. As she opened it, she paused and glanced back one last time. There was that small, secret smile again. Goodbye for now, Amara, she said gently. And then she stepped out and walked away. Amara stood in the doorway long after she was gone, her hand resting lightly against the wood. She felt shaken, emotional, drained, but also strangely lighter. Because whatever that visit had been, another test, another choice, another chance to walk away, she hadn't taken it. She had chosen Ethan. Again. And somehow, deep inside, she knew, someone, somewhere in his family, had just started to believe in her. The week after Ethan's mother visited, Amara felt strangely quiet. Not cold, not distant, just quiet. Ethan and Amara still saw each other every day. They still rode together to events. They still exchanged those soft, warm glances that made her heart flutter. They still shared quiet moments in the car where neither spoke, but everything felt understood. But under the sweetness, there was something tangled, something unsaid, something waiting. They hadn't talked about the second test yet, not fully. Ethan knew his mother had visited, but he didn't know the details. Amara didn't tell him about the passport, the visa, the offer to escape. She didn't keep it from him out of secrecy. She kept it from him because she didn't want him to feel torn between her and the people he loved. But the truth was sitting heavy in her chest. And the longer she held it, the harder it became to breathe. One Thursday evening, after a long day of meetings, Ethan asked her to stay for dinner at his penthouse. They sat by the huge windows overlooking the city. Lights sparkled below like scattered stars. Music played softly in the background. The dinner was simple: pasta, grilled vegetables, and fresh bread. But Amara could barely taste anything. She kept thinking about the tests, the envelope, the visa, the possibility that Ethan might someday be forced to choose. And what if he didn't choose her? Ethan noticed her quietness and reached across the table. "Are you feeling okay?" he asked gently. She forced a smile. "Just tired." He studied her for a moment but didn't push. He never pushed. That was part of what made her love him. After dinner, he walked her to the elevator. The hallway glowed with warm golden lights, casting soft shadows on the walls. He touched her cheek lightly. "I've been thinking." She looked up. "About what?" "I want you to meet my parents properly. No secrets. No tests. Just the four of us." Her breath caught. She wasn't ready. Not after everything. Not while her heart was still bruised. But she also knew this moment would come sooner or later. "When?" she asked softly. "This Saturday," he replied. "We'll have lunch together at their home. I want them to see who you are. Not as someone they tested. Not as someone they doubted. But as the woman I love." Her eyes shimmered. He said it softly, like a truth he'd been carrying for weeks. "The woman I love." Her heart trembled, but so did her fears. Still, she nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll be there." He smiled in relief and kissed her forehead gently. "It'll be perfect." She smiled weakly. But deep inside, something whispered, "What if it isn't?" Saturday arrived too quickly. Amara stood in front of her mirror, wearing a soft blue dress. Simple, elegant, and comfortable. She brushed her hair until it fell in waves over her shoulders. Her hands trembled slightly. She wanted to look presentable, respectful, confident, but she also wanted to look like herself. When Ethan arrived to pick her up, he stared for a moment. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. "Thank you," she whispered. Her heart warmed at his gaze, but nerves twisted in her stomach. The drive to his parents' mansion felt long. The air in the car was warm, filled with soft music and Ethan's gentle presence. But Amara couldn't relax. She kept replaying the memories from the tests. The money, the visa, the heartbreak. Would she be able to smile in front of them like nothing had happened? Would they pretend they didn't test her? Would they apologize? Would they even acknowledge it? She didn't know. All she knew was that her heart felt heavy. The mansion was breathtaking. White stone walls, tall windows, perfectly trimmed gardens, and a fountain that sparkled in the sun. The kind of place Amara never imagined she would walk into. Ethan held her hand as they approached the front door. "Everything will be okay," he whispered. She nodded, even though she wasn't sure. The door opened. Ethan's father stood there, smiling politely. "Welcome." His mother appeared beside him. "Hello, Amara." Amara forced a gentle smile. "Hello." They led them inside to a bright dining room filled with sunlight. The table was already set, flowers, crystal glasses, polished silverware. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. They sat down. The conversation started politely. "How was your week? Would you like more water? Do you enjoy working with Ethan?" But underneath the politeness, there was tension. Finally, after a quiet stretch, Ethan's mother cleared her throat and said, "We want to talk about something important." Amara felt her chest tighten. "About the tests," his mother continued. Ethan froze. "Mom, we owed her honesty," she said firmly. Amara gripped her hands together, her heart pounding. His father sighed. "Amara, we tested you not because we doubted your character, but because we were afraid. Afraid that our son might fall for someone who did not love him, someone who wanted his money more than his heart." His mother added softly, "We needed to be sure." Amara swallowed hard. "So you tested me twice?" "Yes," his mother said. "Your strength impressed us both times. You refused money. You refused an opportunity to leave. You stayed because of him." Her voice was gentle, but the memory still hurt. "We are sorry," she added, but the apology didn't erase the wound. Ethan squeezed Amara's hand under the table. "You never should have done it." His father sighed. "We know, and we will earn her forgiveness, just as she earned our respect." Amara's throat tightened. She tried to breathe, tried to speak, tried to stay calm. But suddenly, all the emotions she'd been burying, fear, hurt, anger, sadness, rose like a wave she couldn't stop. She stood abruptly. The room fell silent. "I'm sorry," she whispered, trying not to break. "I need a moment." Ethan called gently, "Amara," but she was already walking out of the dining room, out of the hallway, through the front door and down the steps. She didn't stop until she reached the gate. She didn't stop until she stepped onto the sidewalk. She didn't stop until she was in a taxi, voice shaking as she said her address. And when the taxi began to move, she cried. She cried quietly at first, then harder, silent tears streaming down her cheeks as she stared out the window. She wasn't crying because of the tests themselves. She was crying because they had treated her love like something cheap, like something that needed proof, like something that wasn't real. She cried because she had finally found a home in someone, and his family still saw her as a question mark. She cried because she couldn't tell Ethan how deeply it hurt. When she reached her house, she went inside, closed the door, and slid down to the floor, hugging her knees as tears soaked her dress. Minutes passed, maybe an hour. She didn't know. Then she heard knocking, soft at first, then firmer, then desperate. "Amara," Ethan's voice called. "Please open the door." She pressed her forehead against her knees. "Amara, please," he said again, voice breaking now. "Don't shut me out." Her heart cracked. She stood shakily and walked to the door. The moment she opened it, Ethan rushed inside, eyes full of worry, regret, and love. "Amara," he didn't wait. He wrapped his arms around her tightly. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have let them test you. I should have protected you from that. Please don't walk away from me." She trembled in his arms. "I'm not walking away from you," she whispered. "I'm hurt, that's all. It broke something inside me." He held her even tighter. "Then I'll fix it. I'll spend as long as it takes to fix it. Just don't shut me out. Don't leave." She pulled back slightly to look at him. His eyes were glassy, filled with emotion she had never seen before. Behind him, she noticed his parents standing at the door, quiet, humble, remorseful. His mother stepped forward. "We came to apologize," she said softly. "Truly, not as a test, not as a challenge, as parents who made a mistake." His father nodded. "We see now that your love is real, and we are sorry for hurting you." Amara wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "You made me feel small," she whispered. His mother's eyes filled. "And that is the last thing we ever want to do." For a moment the room was still. Then Amara nodded slowly. "I forgive you," she said softly. But please, no more tests. I am not a problem to solve. Ethan took her hands gently. You're the woman I love, he whispered. Not someone to question. His parents exchanged a relieved smile. And for the first time since this began, Amara felt like maybe, just maybe, she was becoming part of this family. Not because she passed a test, but because they finally saw her heart. After the moment at Amara's home, after the apologies, the tears, and the quiet forgiveness, something changed. Not just between her and Ethan, not just between her and his parents, but inside her. For the first time in her life, Amara felt chosen. Not as a convenience, not as a test, not as a temporary comfort, but as a woman whose heart mattered. The following weeks were filled with peace, gentle, warm peace that wrapped itself around her days like sunlight. Ethan's parents began including her in family dinners, movie nights, and long conversations in their garden. They asked about her childhood, her dreams, her hopes. Not in a testing way, just curious, human, kind. His mother often slipped her arm through Amara's when they walked together. His father sometimes asked for her opinion on things, business plans, charity ideas, even food recipes. And each time they laughed together or shared a quiet moment, Amara realized something. She wasn't just forgiven. She was accepted. And slowly, she began to believe she deserved it. One evening, Ethan invited her to what he called a quiet night out. She expected a movie or maybe a peaceful dinner downtown. Instead, he drove her to a hill just outside the city, a place where the skyline looked like a bowl of glitter and the wind felt soft enough to erase every worry. A small table was set up under a canopy of candles. The air smelled like vanilla and warm summer. Fairy lights were woven between the trees, and the soft sound of instrumental music played from hidden speakers. Amara stared in awe. "This is beautiful," she whispered. Ethan smiled gently. "Not as beautiful as tonight's purpose." Her heart fluttered. They ate slowly, laughing, sharing stories, teasing each other softly. Ethan kept looking at her like she was the only person alive, and each time she noticed, her stomach twisted in the sweetest way. After dinner, he stood and held out his hand. "Walk with me." She took it. He led her along a path lit with small lanterns. The grass glowed with specks of light, and the sky spilled silver stars. They reached a quiet clearing where dozens of candles flickered in a circle. Amara stopped, her breath catching. "What is all this?" Ethan turned to face her. "It's everything I've felt for a long time." The world slowed. The wind grew quiet, and Ethan took both her hands in his. "Amara," he began softly, "before you came into my life, I thought I understood strength. I thought strength was power, control, success." He shook his head gently. "But then I met you, and you showed me that strength is kindness. Strength is sacrifice. Strength is running toward danger when everyone else runs away." Her eyes filled with tears already. "You saved my life," he continued. "But that wasn't the moment I fell in love with you. I fell in love with you the moment you spoke to me on the construction site like I wasn't a billionaire, just a man. I fell in love with how humble you are, how brave you are, how loyal you are." His voice trembled slightly. "And every day since then, you've shown me the kind of heart I want to spend the rest of my life loving." Amara covered her trembling mouth with her hand. "Ethan," she whispered. He slowly lowered himself to one knee. Her world spun. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, a delicate ring glimmered softly under the candlelight. A simple band with a single diamond, elegant and perfect. "Amara," he said, looking up at her with a smile that held fear and hope all at once. "You walked into my world and filled every empty space I didn't know existed. You turned my fear into trust. You turned my loneliness into peace. And you turned my life into something I look forward to every day." A tear slid down her cheek. "Will you marry me?" Amara covered her face again, overwhelmed by emotions she couldn't contain. She sank to her knees in front of him. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, shakier. "Yes, yes, Ethan. I will marry you." His relief came out in a shaky laugh as he slid the ring gently onto her finger. She cupped his face, breathless, smiling through tears, and kissed him softly. The candles around them flickered like they were celebrating too. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan whispered against her forehead, "This is our beginning." The wedding preparation was unlike anything Amara had ever experienced. There were breakfasts with wedding planners, discussions about locations, color palettes, dress styles, flowers, music. There were visits to venues, from quiet gardens to glittering halls. Ethan always squeezed her hand and said, "It's your day, whatever you want." And she chose something elegant, warm, and intimate. A lakeside ceremony at sunset, with soft roses and white lanterns floating in the water. When she walked into her dress fitting, Ethan's mother gasped softly. "You look like the definition of grace," she whispered. Amara smiled shyly, smoothing a hand over the flowing satin gown. It was simple but stunning, soft white fabric that gathered around her waist, gentle straps, and a train that shimmered like quiet water. His father walked in just then, froze, then smiled warmly. "Amara," he said, "I've never seen Ethan look happier than he does with you. Your family now, truly." Her eyes filled again. The day his parents tested her hurt deeply, but this moment healed something she never thought would mend. The wedding day arrived with a blush-colored sky and a soft breeze that danced through the flowers. Chairs lined the lakeside, guests murmured quietly, and gentle music played from a violinist nearby. Amara stood behind the wooden archway draped in soft fabric and roses, her heart pounding. She held her bouquet so tightly her knuckles turned pale. "You're ready?" Ethan's mother whispered behind her, adjusting the small crystal pin in her hair. Amara nodded slowly. "I'm ready." As the doors opened and she stepped onto the aisle, everything froze. Ethan was standing by the water, wearing a classic black suit. His eyes locked on her with awe, pure awe, and love, and gratitude. Amara felt her breath catch. He wasn't looking at her muscles. He wasn't looking at her past. He was looking at her heart. Each step felt like stepping into a future she never believed she deserved. Ethan smiled so softly that her knees almost gave out. When she finally reached him, he whispered, "You're breathtaking." She blushed. "You're cheating. You're not supposed to talk before the vows." He grinned. The officiant smiled gently. "Let's begin." They spoke their vows quietly, intimately. Promises of loyalty, promises of protection, promises of choosing each other every single day. Amara's voice shook as she said, "I promise to love you not because you rescued me, but because you saw me. You saw my strength when others saw flaws. You saw my heart when others only saw my body. I will walk beside you, protect you, and choose you for the rest of my life." Ethan swallowed hard before saying his own vows. "I promise to love you not despite your strength, but because of it. I promise to make you feel safe, cherished, and understood every single day. You are my beginning and my home." By the time the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," both were already crying. Their kiss was soft, deep, full of every promise they had ever made. Cheers echoed across the water. Lanterns floated upward. Music swelled. And Amara looked at Ethan and knew. The girl who once slept on a construction site had become a woman standing in the arms of the man who cherished her. Their story had not been perfect. It had been tested, broken, mended, but love had won. It always did. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel and tell us where you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.